Lena Dunham. Now, there is a name that was everywhere in the 2010s, right? She was hailed as the voice of her generation, but at the same time, she was maybe one of the most polarizing figures out there. So, what was the deal with that intense reaction? That's what we're going to get into today. And honestly, this quote from the woman herself, it kind of says it all. It perfectly captures that disarming, sometimes polarizing honesty that really became her trademark.
So to really unpack that central question, we've got to go back to the beginning. Let's look at the exact moment she just exploded onto the scene and created this massive paradox that would follow her for the next 10 years. All right, so first up, we're going to look at this central contradiction. You've got this massive overnight success story happening at the exact same time as a huge and growing public backlash.
You know, it's really hard to overstate the impact Girls had. I mean, at just 25 years old, Dunham creates and stars in the show about these four young women trying to figure out life in New York. It was raw, it was funny, definitely divisive, and bam, it made her a household name, like overnight. But here's the thing. Just as quickly as that fame hit, so did the hate. In her own memoir, she talks about how her name, Lena Dunham, started to feel, well, alien. Like it wasn't even hers anymore. It had morphed into this public punchline, but one with a really sharp, painful edge.
Okay, so let's dig into the backlash itself. How did this thing build? What specifically were people so worked up about?
And wow, the criticisms were relentless. Just listen to this list. Unself-aware, an oversharer, privileged, the poster child for myopic millennial thinking, a hapless feminist, even a man-hater. I mean, these weren't just critiques, right? These labels became her entire public identity, and they often totally overshadowed the actual work she was doing. And this is where the paradox really hits you. For all that noise, all the outrage, all the endless articles and think pieces, the show Girls was actually watched by less than 1 million people a week. Think about that. The scale of the controversy was completely, totally out of whack with its actual audience. So what else was going on here? Well, to understand that, we have to pull back the curtain. We've got to look behind that public facade at the private battles Dunham was fighting, which she gets into in her memoir. So while the whole world was busy debating her show, her body, her every single word, Dunham reveals that she was actually fighting this incredibly personal, grueling war on 3 separate fronts. First off, she was dealing with a debilitating chronic illness that left her in pretty much constant pain. On top of that, a growing dependency on prescription meds. And third, she was dealing with the lingering effects of past trauma. And get this, all of this was happening while she was trying to create and run a hit TV show. The trauma expert Gabor Mate actually gave her this really powerful analogy for it. He explained that when you have these early experiences of trauma, it can make you vulnerable, kind of like the weak wolf in a pack that predators can spot and easily target. For Dunham, this was like a light bulb moment. It helped explain this painful pattern she kept seeing in her life. So here's the crucial point. It's all about how these two worlds, the intense public scrutiny and the deep private pain, collided. And Dunham herself actually came up with a name for it. A diagnosis, really. Yeah, in her memoir, which is titled Famesick, she coins this term to describe that toxic cocktail of her public and private pressures. She defines Famesick as that destructive 1-2 punch of celebrity and illness. She says flat out that these were the two most corrosive forces in her life, and they both isolated her in these really profound ways. And when you break it down, you can really see the parallels. On one side, you've got fame. It warps your old relationships and makes any new ones feel totally fake, right? Because you're always under that public microscope. Then on the other side, you have chronic illness. That is so isolating. It forces all your energy inward just to deal with your own private pain and fear. Both of these things, as she argues, they make you just shrink into yourself. So that brings us to today. Where does that leave her now that the peak of that media frenzy has kind of died down? Well, for the most part, that intense cultural spotlight has moved on. She's not the internet's main character of the day every single day anymore. And that, as you can imagine, has totally changed her life and her work. And how does she feel about that change? Basically, pure relief. She says that not being that kind of public figure anymore, not having to carry the weight of everyone's projections and criticisms, it's just completely and totally freeing. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here.
The story of Lena Dunham isn't just about one person, is it? It kind of forces us to ask a much bigger question. What is it about outspoken, complicated, and self-exposing women that triggers such a powerful and often, let's be honest, vicious cultural response? Now that's a question worth thinking about.